welcome to the Lap Podcast. This is episode 12, Max-sterclass.
In this episode, we're talking Max Verstappen's incredible Brazilian Grand Prix, Alpine's jump up in the Constructors, a wet and wild weekend, and more.
Man, what a weekend that we're coming back from. The Brazilian Grand Prix. I don't know how many crashes offhand.
Did someone call for rain? Did anyone call for a little chance of rain over there in Brazil?
That wasn't rain. That was a torrential downpour. That was almost hurricane-like levels of rain, dude. It was insane. They had to cancel qualifying because there was so much rain. They pushed it back to Texas time for us. It was like 7 or 6 o'clock in the morning or something.
I was really excited, too, because I had my dad with me, and I was like, Dad, you're going to watch qualifying. Because he's watched racing. He's watched F1 here and there, and I'm trying to get him into it. And I was like, you're going to watch qualifying. And I promise you, qualifying's like the best part of the weekend, right?
Oh, you're talking about this on Saturday?
Yeah, and I was like, you're going to watch qualifying. You're with me. It's going to be fun. And it just keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And I'm like,
so this is the fun part, huh?
I was like, you know what? We're just going to watch college football because that is actually on. Definitely a downpour of a weekend in Sao Paulo.
A less than ideal weekend for sure.
A less than ideal weekend.
Teams.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, you know what? Before we move on to the drivers on the track, just gotta embrace that beautiful shot of Lewis driving Senna's car.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was just beautiful, spot on beautiful.
I mean, two icons, right? I mean, even decades apart, right? I mean, there is probably no Lewis Hamilton without Ayrton Senna.
Right.
So just a really beautiful moment for him to be able to drive that car. Thankfully, the skies parted just long enough for him to be able to do that. A lot of really good photography, of course, with that. I got to watch the videos of him doing his hot laps. He said in a post event interview, so to speak, that he was only supposed to do one lap, but he stayed out there for like 2 or 3 more because he was having so much fun.
To tell Lewis get off the track, right?
Yeah. He said something to the like of, I wish I could drive this all weekend, which honestly, he probably would have gotten at least a similar result.
If not a little bit better, yeah. That's a fair point.
Yeah. But let's talk about the absolute
mayhem.
No. I want to start at the top. The career-defining drive for Max Verstappen. I mean, this was the title of the episode. It's Max-sterclass because it really was a masterful drive. This drive, to your detriment as the McLaren fan here, is making Max Verstappen a 4-time champion of the world. From P17 all the way to P1, even with a hair of luck. That was, the red flag, but we'll address that in a second. That was the drive of Max's career. Verstappen, after a tumultuous qualifying with an added grid penalty, still coming out on top. In my personal opinion, that was art. That was art. Even Lewis Hamilton saying in the post-race interview that drive was better than his 2021 last to first at Sao Paulo.
That race is going to get Max into Paris at the Place de la Concorde. Do you know where that is?
Go ahead, continue.
That is where the Formula One Hall of Fame is located.
Okay. I mean, he's going to be a 4-time world champion.
I mean, that race was just...
He was already going. He was already a shoo-in, you know what I mean?
Otherworldly.
This race... I mean,
that car.
We talk about like moments for drivers at times where it's like, okay, like what's one race that like solidified? Maybe not for some drivers, it's a I'm here race, or for some drivers, it's just like a mega moment, right? Like for Schumacher in Japan, or for Senna in Monaco, like establishing that he was who he was driving in the wet. Like he was just something different. We already know that Max is incredibly special, but this is the kind of drive that, so like when we talk about Max Verstappen's career, oh man, do you remember? This is going to be that. Do you remember? This is going to be the, do you remember Max's drive in Brazil? Right? This is the moment. Incredibly, incredibly special. And there's a saying that when the rain comes out, the true nature of drivers comes out on full display. In the wets, it's an even playing field, right? We've heard this over the years.
I mean, we'll talk about it later on, but you look at that podium and that shows true.
Yeah. And Max won in the wet by almost 20 seconds.
Once he got the lead, it was over. He practically built a second per lap.
Yeah.
I mean, once he had that lead, he had that clear air. He didn't have to worry about that spray.
Mm-hmm.
He was gone.
I mean, this is look, even regardless of the red flag, which is where, again, I was talking about that hair of luck. The red flag kind of came at a very optimal time for Max. Don't get me wrong.
I would argue that screwed Lando and George more than it helped Max.
Which we're going to talk about for sure. But I think Max could have easily still landed podium, if not still won the race.
Yeah.
Regardless of
it. He was just, dude.
He was charging the field. I think lap 1, he had made up 6 places.
He made up 6 places on the start alone, Tristan. Yeah. I mean, that's insane. 6 spots on the start. I mean, you couldn't do that. I don't think you can do that. You get 10 tries, making 6 spots up from all the way from P17 where all that traffic is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I don't even know how you do that. How you navigate that through the wet. I don't even know how.
Truly extraordinary. And like his command of the Red Bull in those conditions it was like he was driving on a dry track and the rest of the field was, again, slipping and sliding all over the place. Like, basically, look, again, he wrapped up his 4th Drivers' Championship in a row. He's joining Vettel and Prost in the history books. This is the drive. This is the drive of the season, for sure. Across the board, nobody's had a better drive.
Right, and look, and the reason why it's such a momentous moment is because you look at Lando, he's on the heels of Max, if you will. He's trying to do his best to come back and make this a real fight for the drivers. And Max just puts his dominance on full display. Like, look, yeah. I know you're close, you're on my heels, but you're not there yet.
No.
And I am far and better than anyone on this track.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about Lando a little bit more in the spotlight here. It was a huge fumble for Lando.
Did you know that Lando plays football? Yeah, he's not a very good running back, though.
What?
Yeah, because he fumbles all the time.
Oh, my God. Yeah, it was a huge fumble, man. Look, another weekend, another pole, stars aligned. This is typically, if you're starting in the front, this is the kind of conditions where, look, all you have to do is just not mess up. And it just got away from Lando. The red flag.
He did mess up towards the end.
Yeah.
The red flag did not help, but he did mess up. Went wide on a corner towards the end of the race.
Yeah.
I remember because I just threw my hat on the ground in utter frustration.
But look, P1 to P6 in the feature race took a sprint win that honestly got a little bit of an assist there from the FIA, taking that long to get the virtual safety car going, with Hülkenberg literally just sitting right in the line of fire for like 2 laps.
Yeah, that was definitely a talking point. And honestly, if Max hadn't won on Sunday, we probably would have been talking about that a little bit more, because Max was livid about that, because that's what made him start in P17 with the 5-grid penalty, but P12 ideally, because he couldn't get his lap off, but everyone else got theirs off.
Talking about qualifying?
Yeah, it was interesting.
No, I'm talking about the sprint. This is what happened in the sprint with Hülkenberg going off, and that's where it opened up that VSC.
Look, Tristan,
it was a very big weekend.
I need you to give me a little leeway. I think there was like 35 crashes. Lance crashed, I think 3 times altogether. No, just twice. But
I mean, we'll get to him. But
as we always
look, Lando now is 62 points behind Max for the Drivers' Championship. 3 races left to go. We got Vegas, we got Qatar, and we've got Abu Dhabi. Meaning he would need to outscore Verstappen. I did the math on this. Trust me. 21 points per weekend to take the title. Everybody else is mathematically eliminated, if I'm not mistaken. It's over. It's over.
It's about as close to over as you can be without actually being done.
Yeah. I mean, look, the only bright side from this weekend for McLaren as a whole was they got a 2-point gain over Ferrari in the Constructors fight. Still just a 36-point difference, mind you, because Sainz suffered the DNF later in the race. Ferrari was only able to get 10 points from Charles. McLaren's total 12 over the course of the weekend. Like, it was bad. It was bad for you guys.
It was a bad weekend. It was a really bad weekend. And it sucks because what was looking like a really good weekend turned into such a terrible weekend. And that was upsetting. Also,
because everything you guys needed was right there for the taking.
Right.
Starting on pole or starting on the front row. Like,
and we talked about this off air, but they did end up assessing a fine to Lando for the formation lap
and
incident. And George. Which is interesting. I'm glad they resulted with a fine rather than
like penalizing places or something.
Well, yeah, because if he would have had like a 5-second time penalty, that would have
it's one thing if
us a little bit more, but it didn't have anything to do, quote unquote, with the race.
Yeah, it was a second formation lap. They ended up docking off that lap when it came to the final.
Shout out Lance.
Yeah, they ended up docking off that final lap towards the end of the race as well, but there was so much more drama this weekend. And I do want to spotlight the other two cars on the podium.
You can't not do it.
Alpine picked up some pieces, and that's where the red flag I think the red flag affected them the most. Opportune time for them. All they had to do is just not bin it at the end, basically. Just holding it on, red flag, you get a tire change for free, and you're cruising the rest of the way. Alpine picked up those pieces, a 2-3 finish in the feature race. Pierre Gasly's P7 as well in the sprint for Alpine. They were in 9th place. They rocketed up the standings and now find themselves in 6th place in the Constructors with a huge amount of prize money heading their way, barring something insane at the end of the season.
Tristan, do you know, you're a Formula One, I don't want to say historian. What would be the aficionado?
I would say I'm an enthusiast, right?
Okay. You don't give yourself enough credit. Nevertheless, do you know how many wins Esteban Ocon has?
1
in Formula One. Do you know when that was?
Hungary.
What year?
2021.
What were the conditions?
Sideways rain. And a ton of DNFs.
I think Ocon has his next sport. Just throw some water on the track and he's going to take the dub.
Dude, the conditions were ridiculous. And you know what? Look,
you know, we had the tire whisperer conversation. Who's the tire whisperer? Esteban Ocon's the rain whisperer. He's the weatherman.
He is. No, the weatherman.
That's not a bad nickname.
I like that. Let's pin that. I like that. All right. But I think I don't want to give too much credit to Esteban Ocon. I know it's fun, but I don't want to.
Kick him in while he's up, I guess.
Mostly because it's like Johnny on the spot levels of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we're big football fans. Like, sometimes the ball just gets tipped up in the air and the defensive lineman is just standing there.
I'm trying to give them credit because Alpine is a team that I have crapped on in the past, being a McLaren fan, that it's like, haha, you suck and that's your fault.
Yeah, they lost Oscar. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, right. So I'm trying to give them their props. It was an incredible weekend. You found yourself at the right place at the right time and you capitalized. Because guess what?
And that's how the sport works.
Just like every other driver, they could have messed up. They could have gone wide. They could have locked up. They could have put it in the wall, put it in the barriers, just like anybody else did. But they stayed on the track, and they finished with not just on the podium. They finished 2 and 3.
Yeah.
It was an incredible job by Alpine.
Look, give them credit where it's due. Like, you still have to be in the right position to take whatever's given to you, right? I mean, like George Russell earlier this year, Mercedes' first win in Austria, right? Like Lando and Max hitting each other, you know, Lando got DNF'd in that race, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
George is just there to pick up the pieces. You got to be in the right place at the right time.
Right.
I understand all that. 35 points this weekend is huge for Alpine. That's the exact amount of points they gathered. Shot them past Williams, V-Carb, and Haas in the standings. And while, look, it's exciting for Alpine, all credit to them, again, right place, right time, capitalizing on the moment. I feel pretty gutted for Haas. I'm not going to lie.
Well, hold on. Before we talk about Haas, I have one interesting fact for you.
Okay.
Esteban Ocon, the weatherman.
Another Esteban Ocon fun fact?
Yes. The weatherman has led more laps this year.
You should have saved this one. You should have saved this one because we're going to talk about it later.
Okay,
I promise.
All right,
save it.
All
Look,
right.
you've already built all this.
Okay.
Look, we've built up the excitement. We're gonna get there. Just hold on to it. Look,
You know who it's going to be. You know who it's going to be TLPs.
And look, if you keep up with Formula One stuff, you'll know exactly where this is going. But I wanted to finish out my point.
Okay, all right. Haas.
I feel gutted for Haas. In a weekend where Hulk double DNF'd, they scored 0 points. Ollie Behrman, the fact that he even kept it on track, remarkable. But
I do have a question for you about that Hulkenberg situation.
Okay.
What is the proper name for the workers that work the track on the side? What would be their proper name?
You're talking about the marshals?
Okay, the marshals. If they know that he is an instant DNF, a black flag as they call it, if they help him off, why'd they do it?
I think it was a situation probably where they weren't looking at him as like, hey, he's going to get back in this race, but
they determined that he was beached and he was not going to be able to save himself.
He couldn't move, but it was at just enough of an angle where they were like, if we just nudge this car, he can at least drive himself back to the pits. We don't have to pull all the machinery out and red flag or whatever to get this car off. We can just nudge it, and then he can just drive himself back to the pits.
It was literally just
basically,
like an inch and a half.
Yeah, because he was assisted by the marshals, that disqualified him. But Haas are just 3 points behind with what have been quicker cars this season. And after scratching and clawing all year for this P6 spot, masterful when it comes to like, hey, look, we're bringing upgrades. This is a progressional thing. We're not doing just dumps of upgrades like they did under Gunther Steiner. All due respect. Kamatsu's done a really good job leading this team. Like, this would have given Haas a lot more prize money, if they stay in P6, right? They can use that to build or incentivize their own team. This is going to be great for their next season. And they've done so much in like one weekend with certain things out of their control. And now they've lost out potentially on more prize money with 3 races to go. But, and here's my caveat, and this is where it becomes fun for us as the fans who are excited about these last 3 races. We no longer have a driver's battle. We still got a constructor's battle, of course, at the top. But right here in P6, we got ourselves another one.
P6 is for the taking. Okay, so let's look at it. Let's lay it out. Alpine now has 49 points. They currently lead the way for the race for 6th, if you will.
Yes.
In 7th is Haas. They have 46. And then which we'll talk about a little bit later, the Red Bull V-Carbs.
Yeah.
Should be called the Racing Bulls. But they have 44 points. So you have 49, 46, 44 split in the race for 6th. And look, don't get it misconstrued. Just because this is not the race for the top 3 and the constructors or whatever, this is a lot of money, and these are all 3 teams that could use this money going forward. Again,
infrastructure, machinery, just like any kind of advantage these smaller teams can get.
This is a big deal, listeners. Like I can't explain to you how much of a big deal this is going to be, and it's not like this is going to stand put. V-Carb can score points. Haas can score points. And Alpine can score points. These are all leaders. These are all scoreboards that can change.
100%. And let me add a couple of dynamics here. Okay? Maybe at least one. We'll save another one for a little bit later. A dynamic here is, let me ask you a question, Kevin.
Okay.
Who are the drivers for Haas next year?
The drivers for Haas next year, that's going to be Gabriel... No. Sorry. That's going to be Esteban Ocon and... Why am I blanking? Ollie Behrman.
But the first name you mentioned, Esteban Ocon. He's driving for Alpine right now. Where's he going to be next year?
We're going tank.
That's where I'm going. So incoming driver for Haas in 2025, Esteban Ocon. Here's the question.
I didn't think about this, too.
Would he intentionally pull off the gas pedal for Alpine if it meant giving his next team a bit of a leg up going into 2025?
Obviously, this is
because you're out the door. It's done. It's over. It's going to happen.
Obviously, this is all jokes.
No, I'm dead serious.
Do it. He's not gonna do it.
No, I'm dead serious. What incentive would he have? Let's say it's Abu Dhabi.
They could probably find him if they could. Haas could probably find him Or not Haas, excuse me. Alpine could probably fine him if they found out he was intentionally selling.
No, you can't prove it. But could you prove it?
You could prove it.
I mean, could you though?
They're not gonna do it,
dude.
The dramatization.
Look, let me explain. Let me explain. Because these teams are all fighting for like single or like 1 or 2 points, towards the bottom here, right?
What would be the drive to survive
in their best case scenario, they're getting like 4 to 6. All I'm trying to say is there is a non-0% chance. In fact, I think it's a much bigger than 0% chance. We go into Abu Dhabi and it's like a 1-point margin between like Haas and Alpine as far as like where this driver's like championship is going to go. Imagine, if you will, Esteban Ocon is the lead Alpine. He is literally in like 9th or 10th place.
And then he lets Checo pass him.
Oh no, I missed the turn wide. And I let somebody by me by accident. They was fighting me for 9th or 10th place. Oh, and the Haas's were already ahead. Oh, this is going to give them P6. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, wipe away fake tear. I'm so sorry, Alpine. You guys are real cool.
I wish y'all could see the smile that Tristan has just creating this
Am I wrong,
drama, though. Yes,
Are you
you're
kidding
wrong.
me?
Yes, you're wrong.
No.
This is not going to happen. These are professionals that want to win.
Sure, they're all professionals to a point.
Like if Esteban
Every driver on this grid thinks they're the main character. You think that Esteban Ocon being Esteban Ocon wouldn't? Oh man, I totally just screwed up that qualifying. I'm so sorry. I'm starting from P17 all of a sudden. Haas, they're ahead of us. They might have a chance to take this.
And then he texts Haas.
He's already got Komatsu's number.
He's like, I got you, fam.
Dude. I mean, they don't have to make it a text exchange. Just pass each other on the grid. Toss a little wink over. You know what I'm saying?
Do a little, what is it?
We have to retire the car, guys. Esteban, the car looks perfectly fine. We're seeing no problems. I feel it. There's a problem with the brakes.
Spiritually, this car is not okay.
I'm just not feeling it, guys. Look, I know where you're coming from. I know that's like the look, this is the general way that the sport works. But come on, man. There is so much potential here. I am not ruling this out in the slightest. If for some reason, next 3 races, Esteban Ocon's in a position to score points and then doesn't, that's going to be in the back of your mind. You're going to be thinking about it. You can't not.
Okay, all right.
If he's in front of the Haas's.
All right, okay. I get you.
Oh, no, man. I went wide on turn 3. Coming down that giant straight in Vegas. Oh, the Haas's went right by me. I couldn't believe it. I'm not wrong.
All right. So when it comes to the race for 6th, do you think I could get an early prediction out of you?
For the end of the season?
Mm-hmm.
I think Haas
We'll keep up with this going forward, of course.
Yeah, sure. I got Haas. I think that they will inevitably re-grab 6. They actually do have a very quick car. They could win this thing on merit. You know what I mean? V-Carb, I think that's the question, is how far...
I like V-Carb.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fight probably for 7th when it comes to Abu Dhabi. I think over these next 2 races, Haas will find themselves grabbing a few more points. They'll probably pass Alpine. Alpine's going to be right there. If they have a lot of luck in Abu Dhabi, maybe they could pass Haas. But I think overall, Haas's car is so much faster. I think it's going to be a question of is V-Carb going to be able to scratch enough points away to repass Alpine again?
I think Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson are firing on all cylinders right now. And they're both, you have to think about it, they are both fighting their ass off for a seat. They're trying their best to stay in that Red Bull system, and they don't know what could happen. So these guys are putting it all out there. I think V-Carb, at the rate they're going, have the drive, if you will.
To survive?
I think V-Carb, when it's all said and done, could take 6th. I do not think Alpine stays there because they don't put consistent
You mean
points.
7th?
No, I mean 6th.
You think they're going to pass Haas?
I think it's a better possibility than you might think.
So you're saying by the end of the season that it's going to be V-Carb, Haas, and then Alpine?
Yes, that would be my
in
prediction.
that order.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's going to be Haas. Man, this is tough. Because I really do think Haas recapture P6. I think they're going to hold it. They've just done such a good job. Everybody there seems really dialed in. I would say I think Alpine are going to keep it by a point.
Sixth or seventh?
Seventh.
Okay.
So I think VCarb are just going to come up just shy. Not for a lack of trying on the driver's part, but I think you're talking about points weekends that are like 2 to 4 max. You're fighting for like single points at this stage.
Right, yeah.
So like I think when I'm talking about Haas, like I think they're going to recapture. They're probably going to, I think they'd eke it out by like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 max. But then you're talking about like you got to hope that Alpine drop enough and VCarb land in the points just enough to like, really eke out some into that gap. Because when you're fighting that low, every point really matters. It's not like Ferrari, McLaren, like, oh, we won this weekend and then we won this weekend. We're fighting with like 18 and 25 point margins. These guys are fighting with 4 to 1 point margins.
All right, well, we got another constructors battle to look forward to. 6, 7, and 8. Alpine, Haas, and the Red Bulls, VCarb,
whatever they're going to call themselves next year.
I don't even know.
I did want to make a quick mention about Aston Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, just
going
like
off script, I see.
Well, no. I was going to go here because Lance Stroll deserves a little bit of a microscope for this weekend. And only for a moment, just bear with me. Poor start to the weekend.
Terrible.
Stroll finished P19 in the sprint above a DNF'd Nico Hülkenberg and then DNF'd on the formation lap.
That did happen. Beached it.
He did it on purpose. This is my problem.
You think, all right, you know what? You want to play Drama Queen earlier? I'm playing Drama Queen right now. So I bet you Lance and Lawrence Stroll got in an argument that morning. He said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'll DNF the car. Don't say I won't do it. I'll do it. I'll crash the car.
No balls.
I will make you spend money on a car that I will crash twice. Not once, twice. I'll do it. Don't you dare me. And what do? He beached it. He said, I don't want to race today.
He goes off on the formation lap. And then trying to get back on track.
No,
there's so much runoff to go around on. He went through the gravel.
He went backwards into the gravel. I did not understand that either.
No, he whips the car around and then just starts driving through it. You can't tell me that wasn't on purpose, man.
He said, I don't want to race in the rain.
Dude, probably. We're not going to score points. What am I doing here? Like that was his entire. It had to have been what he was going through his mind.
All right, okay, that's enough. That's enough, Lance Stroll. Now,
dude, look, we're on a hater stretch right now because guess what we're talking about next? Checo's going to Checo.
All right, that's not what I have. I thought we were going to give praise to a couple of drivers. Should we give praise and then do the hater check?
I mean, people think I'm hating.
Let's balance it, okay? All right.
You want to go praise?
Let's go praise.
Okay.
Let's talk about.
I was going to roll this in together, but
okay.
Go ahead.
Let's. Who had a good weekend?
Who had a good weekend?
Who had a great weekend?
A great weekend.
One of your own.
Who? George Russell?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a good race. Finished P4.
You want to talk about it, or you just want to?
I mean, yeah, we kind of went a little bit all over the place here. Look, it was a tough break for Russell because starting from P1, finishing in P4 is not necessarily ideal. But given the conditions, put him into P6 in the driver's standings. He passed Lewis Hamilton, who's been on the back foot, respectfully, for the last like 2 of 3 races. He also got hit with that fine alongside Lando Norris, a little pocket change for these guys. But, I mean, it was a good drive. It was unfortunate, though, because Russell in that race is talking about how when they called him into pit, he was losing the tires. Lando was definitely catching him, but he was kind of fighting him off on the main straight. Mercedes seemed a little bit quicker on that actual primary straight. When they call him in, and then I think it was like a lap or 2 later, the red flag hits, and I think, honestly, if they don't pit him there, maybe Lando passes him, but George could very well have been in a better position, said McLaren maybe, pit. It was just such a weird weekend, but still a strong drive. Who else do you want to dole out praise to?
I wanted to give praise to, ironically, the VCarb drivers. I think Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda had an incredible weekend from quali all the way over to the race itself.
Yeah. I agree.
They're really putting together a good weekend, and I know we might be the only Formula One podcast talking about this. And I know he DNF'd to the point where they couldn't repair the car on the short turnaround, which really sucked.
Talking about Albon?
All right, well, yeah, I mean, thanks for breaking my build up. Yeah, Alex Albon. He had an incredible weekend. I know that we're not going to talk about it much going forward, but there was times during that qualifying that he topped the charts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was making that Williams hum, and I would have.
And then he hummed it into the wall.
Yeah, I would have really loved to see what that weekend would have finished like for Albon had he have not crashed it to the point. And honestly, that really sucks that he wasn't able to get the car back out there due to the postponed quali that made quali and race same day. Kind of sucks, but those are the three drivers I personally wanted to highlight. I think Lawson and Yuki and Albon had a really good weekend, all things considered for Alex.
I think maybe you're giving a little bit too much credit to Alex Albon, respectfully. Maybe because at the end of the day, like...
It's not about giving credit today.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm having a tough day. But, look, the reality is, crashing in the crashing and putting yourself out of contest, there is some credit there, but the philosophy is, like, it's the same thing with, like, football. Best ability is availability.
No, and I agree. And Albon's not really one of those drivers I personally don't think about when I think about not being available.
No, I know. But so I'm saying there's a limit to the amount of, like, credit I'm willing to give him because inevitably he did put himself in the position where they couldn't even drive the car in the race.
Right.
So, like, a little credit, cool. He was doing really well until he wasn't. Right? It's the same principle of like George Russell last year. Great drive at Singapore up until, you hit the wall and you crashed. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, your day was ruined because you messed up. We still messed up. And to me, that knocks points off.
No, I get it. And that's why I mentioned him last. I did that on purpose.
Sure.
I think in that order, Lawson, Yuki, and Albon had a solid weekend.
Can I get back on my haterism?
All right, let's get back on your haterism, and let's start it off with a fun fact.
Fun fact? Another Kevin Walker fun fact?
I'm going to finish off the tease I gave earlier. Esteban Ocon.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Has led more laps this year than who?
Checo Perez.
19-1. And you're off.
Man, I've said this so many times on the podcast. It's not like I wake up every morning going, you know who like really deserves hate today? Sergio Perez. You know who is going to get it though?
I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
A Sergio Perez shirt or something?
No, Sergio Perez coffee mug.
Man.
So the first thing you think about is...
So when it falls off the counter and breaks, I can think about it. I can think about him more directly.
Maybe I'll buy it for you pre-broken. Buy it, shatter it.
FedEx are going to send it just as it's supposed to be intended.
Like, oh, it's a Checo mug. Bam!
Look, it was a dumpster fire weekend, and I know I'm hitting the table on purpose. Look, finishing in the elements is still... it's still kind of a W for Checo at this stage of his career. So, I'll give him a little golf clap. Good job. You finished the race. You know where he finished it? P11. Guess how many points you get for P11? None. Absolutely zero. 51 seconds behind Max Verstappen in first place. You know who did finish ahead of him? You just talked about two of them. Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. Great weekend for the V-Carbs. That's an actual hearty clap. Because I've been rooting for Liam.
They're gunning for that seat, I'm telling you.
They're
going to make Christian Horner make a tough decision.
They are. And we've talked about what's going to happen with that seat dynamic. I was awake yesterday covering things, and then the Gabriel Bortoleto news broke. We're going to talk about that more. As I was posting it, I said, the final driver seat was solidified, and then I posted it, and I was like, kinda, but not really. But Checo Perez, outside the points again, almost a full minute behind first place, same machinery. I don't see the defense anymore. Like, how do you defend it? You want to try?
I'm not trying.
Okay. You can't defend it. This idea that Checo Perez is still relevant, no.
You're just getting two completely different performances out of the same car between Max and Checo.
If you put Liam Lawson in that car, I think he finishes at least P6.
I would agree with that. At least in the points. At least in the points.
Yeah. He's fighting Lando at P6, right?
It's like, it's so different because with Max, you're getting generational drives. Like I've said
it's hard to compare Max to
three
anybody.
times, but like 115% out of the car, and Checo's getting like 20%.
Yeah. It's hard to compare to a generational talent. I understand.
They're both outstanding.
Yes.
But Checo's outstandingly bad.
Yeah. I'm glad you finished that off. I almost made it sound like I was giving him credit. Look, again, Max generational drive. I get it. Super huge weekend. But the only person you can compare Checo to is his teammate. So unfortunate for Checo, his teammate is not only a damn good driver. He had not just a damn good day. He had one of the best drives of all time. Let's say we knock 30 seconds off of that. That would mean he still finished 21 seconds behind Max Verstappen. That's disgusting. I can't. I just. It's one of those deals again where it's not like I walked into this year going, man, I'm just praying on this man's downfall. But it's become so frustrating where I'm like, there is an absolute standard for success here that's just not being met. And the fact that Red Bull, they do deserve some ire for this. They stuck with him in the midst of this decline. They can't pretend like Checo has been good and like, oh, like it just makes a lot of sense. Like he's just performing really well. He's not.
And you know what? And we personally, I don't think our podcast is one to give Christian Horner a lot of credit. I give him credit because, and it's kind of interesting you brought that up because now I'm thinking about it. We were like, no, replace Checo, replace Checo, replace Checo. Instead, he kept Checo.
Replace Danny.
Well, hold on. He kept Checo, replaced Danny, and now he's getting to evaluate all the talent that he has in that Red Bull system, and he's going to be able to make a decision off of some really good races from Lawson, from Yuki, from any other of the rookie or young drivers.
From their academy, yeah.
From their academy, right? So he kind of put himself in a position where it's like, okay, if Checo continues to bleed, I'm going to have some options here. And I'm not just going to have to throw someone into the seat that I technically haven't seen race, right? Obviously, we've seen a lot of Yuki throughout the years. We're seeing more from Liam Lawson, which we love. So he's getting his selection to pick and replace. And Checo just doesn't have the fight anymore. He's just like out there, like you said, just trying to complete the drive, it feels like at times, right? I mean, you're not seeing him really overtake unless it's there for the taking against like a Sauber or an Aston Martin or whatever. Even then, it's
which
still,
those cars are at the bottom of the field right now.
Exactly. So it's like you want to put someone who's younger in that seat, someone who's actually going to be a little fierce. Like, like Christian Horner will probably be okay if you're, running wide every now and then if you're trying to actually overtake, if you're trying to be fierce. Max is a fierce driver. You have a fierce driver next to someone who's just cruising, just trying to finish the race.
And look, there were conversations as well, speaking of like who's going to potentially fill those seats, like Franco Colapinto getting incorporated in. Do you buy that at all?
I don't think so, because it just makes too much sense for him to Horner to stay in the Red Bull system.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'll ask you, what kind of hoops would he have to jump through to get Colapinto?
I appreciate you asking that question because I've had this conversation with other F1 fans. The idea is neat. He would need to get, obviously, Checo, they're going to have to pay out his contract. They had signed him, so they're going to have to pay him out.
Ideally, they're going to have to do that anyway.
They're going to pay him out. That's already going to happen. But then you have to go to Williams and get them to break his contract with the team, whatever reserve role junior contract they already have signed with him. They have the exclusive rights to him. You have to get Williams to agree to break that and allow you to get Franco. And you have to have so much confidence that Franco is going to be good enough to hang with Max or at least be within 10 seconds of him.
So it would, it's not going to be an easy road. Rather, where he could just go to one of the V-carb seats. It's not like you're picking from the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, and like I've talked about what I think is going to happen here. Obviously, again, we believe Checo's done. It's over. I still think it's going to be Lawson driving next to Max, and I think they're going to promote Isaac Hadjar from F2. And I guess my intuition's been pretty good about these kind of things, because we're going to talk about this in a moment.
Well, you talking about that has made me believe that. I think Lawson is the best fill-in for that role. I think he's the fiercest driver that you can put next to Max. He's shown that.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't backed down to any veteran or any move so far this year. He's going to drive fierce.
Yeah.
And you got to love that. I mean, obviously, Horner has an attraction for that.
Yeah. They don't seem keen to bring Yuki up. They've had so much time.
You've had a lot of time. You've had a lot of time and a lot of evaluation. If you were going to do it, honestly, you probably would have done it by now.
Yeah. So I just don't see Yuki, as much as we want to cheer for Yuki's success here, I just don't see it happening. It just seems like that's going to be the transition. That's going to be the domino falling. And
we leveled off a little bit of hate there.
Yeah, we're cooling down. But I before we talk about some more of the breaking news, I do want to talk about, just to wrap up Sao Paulo. I mean, there were so many DNFs and crashes this weekend.
Yeah, there was. And this is called a segue, ladies and gentlemen. He brings up a point, and he knows that his co-host, aka me, has a point that I want to insert. I mean, that's just good radio. All right. So a lot of a talking point between a lot of the drivers this weekend was, dude, and I know I sent you the radio call, the entirety of the radio call between Oscar Piastri and his race engineer. The drivers were genuinely. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I would say they were genuinely. I don't want to use the word terrified, but they had to be pretty optimistic or pretty cautious.
Maybe
I would say.
Fearful.
It was a very wet race.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask you. Obviously, we love drama. That's why we fell in love with this sport.
Yeah.
Should they have raced on Sunday? I mean, very just point blank. I have my opinion and I have my reasons why, but I want to start with yours.
Should they have raced at all?
I mean, raced at all or prolonged it to the point where it was, which I don't even know if it would have ever gotten better because it never really did.
I don't have all of the data from the whole day in Sao Paulo, but obviously it was just raining all day. Right. So I think that they should have raced. Don't get me wrong. I think that they should have been a lot more proactive with the red flags, I think is my caveat. I don't mind them racing, but when you have drivers across the grid at lap, I don't know, what lap was it where Colapinto crashed? I think he crashed at lap 30. From lap 20 all the way to 30, you had drivers saying, look, this is just not safe conditions. Eventually somebody crashed. And then they brought out the red flag, and then it became a little bit more drivable after that.
It was more of a matter of when, not if, someone was going to crash. It was okay, we're finally clear, green flag. All right, who's going to crash next? It's get your laps in, get your pit stops in, get everything in now before someone else crashes.
I don't mind that they raced. I think that, of course, it becomes incredibly difficult when drivers are complaining about visibility. You have to start red flagging at a certain point, and I think you have to be more proactive than reactive, right? The FIA screwed up in being reactive. They waited all the way until Franco Colapinto's crash to red flag the race. In my opinion, it shouldn't have gotten that far. Maybe you red flag, look, we're going to delay, or we're going to suspend, and we're going to come back. We're just going to have a reduced lap count or something of that nature. We're going to do this race. Conditions are going to clear. We just need to stop for the interim. And then everybody gets a fresh set of tires.
I like that you brought that up because obviously this is a sport that I'm newer in and I'm learning more and more as I go. TLPs, y'all let us know. Would a decrease in the amount of laps for a condition as bad as we had Sunday be a good answer?
It's not unprecedented. It happened in Japan last year, if I'm not mistaken. There was so much rain that it took them forever to even start the race. The race begins, and then I think it was only 24 laps. It was a very short race, and that inevitably was the race where Max won his championship. It's not without precedent. Obviously, if a red flag happens during a race, it just happens, right? The idea is eventually they still want to try to finish the race in its entirety.
Right.
Thinking back to when Zhou Guanyu was still racing Alfa Romeo Silverstone, big crash,
yep.
It suspended the race for, I think, a good while.
Right, of course.
They still weren't able to eventually, finish the race. But more or less, I think it's just, again, it just kind of circles back to just being proactive. The FIA have to do what's right for the safety of the drivers. At a certain point, you've got a bunch of people, Oscar Piastri, pleading for what felt like 10 laps.
And he's Mr. Cool on the track. He never shows any real emotion, win, lose, or tie or whatever. He was pretty scared. I do advise if you can go on social media, look up Oscar Piastri rain or something like that, I'm sure you'll find the radio call.
Yeah, it's
give it
his
a listen.
onboard.
Yeah, give it a listen. It's definitely worth it. You kind of get a perspective from what the drivers are dealing with and the true fear that they have putting their lives out on the line for this sport. I feel like as spectators, we take it for granted because we're watching from a top. We're watching from afar, obviously, more like the helicopter view and the camera is up in the stands. We don't see that spray. We see it kind of come up, but we don't see how thick that spray is.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it from the visor of these drivers, and you just have no clue.
Yeah. The only frame of reference some of these guys have in conditions that were this bad is just the taillights of the car ahead of them.
And even those were barely visible. Like
Yeah.
it was really, really rough. So so you voiced your opinion. I think a lap count decrease should be something to take into consideration going forward. I think there should be, kind of like you said, be proactive. Sorry. The FIA needs to determine at what level, because I know that we're talking about levels of rain from 1 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So at what level do we determine, okay, this race is going to be hindered by the weather, so we need to decrease by X amount of laps based on how many laps we're supposed to race?
Well, no, it's just, to me, I think it's just a matter of, like, you can still race within the time frame, because obviously these things do have a certain amount of time they have to complete within. Like, that's why they had a reduced race in Japan. They probably had enough fuel to do the full, like, however many laps, the full distance, but they shortened it because of time. You can still do that, but you have to understand, like, there is an installation of, like, look, there's going to be a certain wet period of this race. We are going to red flag if it reaches a certain level of downpour, right? And that becomes, like, that's just where you have human beings being human beings. It's very hard to arbitrarily go, look, we have an exact number. It's got this much weather, this much rain. We are immediately red flagging. You know what I mean? You're doing certain things on an interpretive level and an ambiguous level.
Well,
however, when you have drivers across the grid, again, just going, this is undrivable, this is unsafe. It's not like a oh, hey, like, we're consulting. No, like, just make the right decision. If you can't see from the onboard the car ahead of you, and you know the distance is at least, whatever, it's undrivable. Not even just from a spray perspective, it's just becoming undrivable and difficult to even see the track. There were complaints even with clean air that people weren't able to see. That's where you have to red flag it.
I agree. Okay, and I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying, so I'm going to try to describe it in a different way. Okay. What I mean is they have these levels that they call for rain, and I'm assuming that these levels work based on a certain measurement of rain.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, we are expecting this many. I'm going to use inches. I know they use inches, but whatever. We're expecting this much inches of rain. We classify that as whatever they would classify that in that class of rain or that class of weather, right? I think they should determine, okay, 1, 2, 3, well, those are racing conditions. Those are fine. Those are minimal enough to continue to drive.
Basically, you're looking for a ceiling.
Right. 4, 5. Right, and I don't know how they do it, whether they do 1 to 5, 5 to 1, whatever. I'm just saying, as an example, just stay with me. 4, 5, those numbers increase, those inches increase, that weather increases, and it's like, okay, if we are in the conditions of 4, 5, that is when we will do the proactive thing. And okay, coming into this race, we're expecting 4 or 5 conditions. Whether that be the beginning of the race, the middle of the race, the last part of the race, whatever. We're going to, suspend it if you need to, move it, or not suspend it, but postpone it if you need to, move it however you need to.
No, I mean, red flagging would suspend it in action. So you could red flag if you believe the conditions are going to get better.
And you could do that. I think that's an option, of course, but I think there should be a number. It's like, okay, we're expecting class 4, and whenever we have a class 4, we take the amount of laps that we're supposed to race, and we decrease it by a 10-15%, something like that. I think that should be a talking point. I don't know if I'm crazy for that. I guess we'll talk about it more going forward. But But yeah, I think there should be a little bit more precedent whenever it comes to that. I don't think it should be so much of a judgment call.
The sentiment is I don't think you're off base in the slightest. It's just a matter of like getting the FIA to actually have anything definitive. Sometimes it's really challenging. We are starting to kind of creep up on the back end of this podcast.
Sorry about the longer pause. We had a lot to talk about.
No, but there's one more thing at least I wanted to talk about before we wrap up here, which the big news coming into this morning, really. Sauber are out on Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Gabriel Bortoleto in alongside Nico Hülkenberg. Every time we kind of talked about this driver situation as it evolved, I'll pat myself a little bit on the back here because I felt like this was the move. Not that I didn't like Valtteri, but in Zhou, it looked like he was gone, right? Gabriel Bortoleto was being thrown around a lot in this conversation. I'm excited to see it, honestly. He's currently the F2 championship leader. He's tested really, really well for McLaren compared to Norris and Piastri. Also had some incredibly impressive drives in F2 this year. A very notable last to first finish in Monza. I think this is the right move. I think it just adds another exciting rookie into an already very exciting field in 2025.
No, it's going to be an exciting field of rookies and, what you would classify as young drivers, not technically rookies, kind of like Lawson.
Lawson's a pseudo, not really.
Yeah, kind of situation.
We got Behrman, who's going to be officially a rookie next year. Kimi Antonelli. I mean, oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know you are. But Valtteri reportedly is taking the reserve driver role and going back to Mercedes.
Is that confirmed?
I do believe that is confirmed. Not F1 confirmed, but I have seen a lot of reports.
It's just been thrown around a lot. Yeah.
That's why I use reportedly.
Look, I've seen a lot of the similar reports as well. I think it feels really appropriate for him to go back to Mercedes. Landing a reserve role in some capacity felt like kind of the right place for Valtteri at this time in his career. And especially with Mick Schumacher set to drive for Alpine's World Endurance Championship team. I think this is going to be a really good, coming home, so to speak, for Valtteri, because he and Toto Wolff have a very good relationship, obviously won a number of championships with Mercedes.
I think he'll be able to also show a lot of veteran leadership for Kimi. For Kimi.
Yeah. Him working alongside George might be
It's kind of interesting because you kind of obviously George is older, but they are two young guys racing with each other. There's no real quote unquote veteran.
Yeah.
You bring in Valtteri. I mean, he's one of the best vets we have in F1 right now actively.
Yeah, I love this move whenever it officially becomes 100%.
Reportedly.
Reportedly it's going that way. But obviously there's a little bit of history between Valtteri and George. George and Williams trying to compete for the Mercedes seat. There were incidents during that time frame, but Valtteri back in Mercedes feels awesome. I'm excited for this, and Valtteri potentially back in a Mercedes, given if somebody can't make it, George gets sick or Kimi gets sick or just something happens in general. It'd be really cool to see Valtteri back in the seat for Mercedes. There was just there's a lot of really good relationship there. Speaking of his teammate, though, at the moment, Zhou Guanyu, what do we think is going to happen with Zhou? Personally, I think he's out of the sport. I mean, Sauber were terrible this year, and Zhou hasn't even been able to beat Valtteri for large portions of this season. It's unfortunate. Zhou's got a lot of money behind him, but just because you have a lot of money behind you doesn't mean you're entitled to a race seat. He just didn't quite perform up to the potential that he was walking into the sport with. It's unfortunate, but Formula One's cutthroat. Maybe he lands a reserve role. I don't know how many reserve roles are open at this point. I think he finds himself in another series. Of course, when you drive Formula One at all, you're still incredibly talented, but you have to be the tip at the top to be in Formula One. So, any quick thoughts on what you think's gonna happen with Zhou?
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. I think he'll probably be out of the sport, and that comes with a little bit of, how would I put, melancholy. I think I use that right, because it's sad that he's leaving, obviously, right? Ideally he's probably done, but I know that he was excited and he was proud to represent his country being the first Chinese-born F1 driver, and that's something that you can't take away, right, from Zhou. And this sport's not going to last forever, just like any other sport, and that is something he's going to be able to say for a lifetime that he did do, right?
It's kind of weird what they did for him in China, where like they had the winners, up ahead, but then they set up a separate placard just for him to drive up to, like to celebrate just finishing the race. You don't remember that?
I don't remember it, but
yeah, at the end of the Chinese Grand Prix, obviously he finished in like 17th or something of that nature. He did not score points, and at the end of the race, he does like the hot lap and comes back, but he doesn't go to the pits. They have a separate thing just down the road just for him, with his face on it, Zhou Guanyu, Chinese driver, just celebrating in front of the Chinese fans, and he gets out and he celebrates like he won the race.
Hey man, look,
big moment, I get it, but they're not doing that for like Oscar Piastri, and they weren't doing that for Danny Rick in Australia. They don't do that for like Lewis Hamilton and George Russell and Lando Norris.
All right, I'm trying to be nice, but it's probably because he's not that good. Okay. With that being said,
world's biggest Zhou Guanyu hater, Kevin Walker.
Good career, Joe. Sorry it didn't work out. We'll enjoy you for the rest of the year.
Final 3 races.
Yeah.
And speaking of the final 3 races, not going to give predictions for Las Vegas quite yet.
Coming back to America.
We are back in the States for the spectacle that is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. That's going to be on November 23rd, which means you'll get to hear our lovely voices returning Thursday the 21st. Stateside, depending on what time, whatever. I don't know. I'm making it too complicated. But we're going to be back on Thursday the 21st. We're going to have our predictions. We're going to try to figure out a better way to segment the driver that we think is going to be great. That's not the driver of the day.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of a change going forward. Starting from next pod and going forward in the future, instead of just giving a podium, we're going to start giving our top 5.
Yep. Still going to do the DNF. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah, DNF, drive of the day. Sorry, I got to use that. Drive of the day. DNF's going to stay.
Soft idea. Hero of the weekend.
So we're going to be doing DNF and drive of the day, and then we're going to be doing the top 5 finish, because we kind of do that anyway. But officially going forward, mark it, put it in the book.
Thursday the 21st.
1 through 5 we're going to start doing. And you know what, listeners, we want some more engagement with y'all. We want to be able to respond with y'all and talk about y'all's comments in the show. Who should we rant about next?
Who deserves the ire?
Active or past?
Okay.
What if we get a little Joss Verstappen?
Oh my goodness. All right, look, this one's gone on for way longer than I think either of us anticipated.
If you're still listening at this point, we appreciate
hats off to you
much.
For listening. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like, hit the follow, whatever you got to do. Come on back for more. Share
Repost.
it. Put it in front of your friends, your family, your government official.
Put it on while you're in the shower.
Look, we got to get out of here. Look, thank you so much for watching. This has been the Lap Podcast. I'm Tristan Ryans. That's Kevin Walker. We're going to catch you guys next time.
See ya.